What is up, Walker Nation? Are you ready for another review video on types of federalisms with Alex Caspary, Josh Chang, Matthew Parsons, and Evan Shamoun?
Federalism is a division of the central and state governments. Types of powers. There are different types of powers that are used. The first one is delegated, also known as enumerated and expressed. They are powers that are specifically described and assigned in the U.S. Constitution of Article 1, Section 8. An example would be the power to coin money or the power to declare war. The second type of power is implied powers, and those are powers that are based on open interpretation. They are powers that Congress deems necessary to impose. An example would be banks, because a government cannot function without having a bank. The third type of power is the inherent powers. Those are powers that are granted based on the sovereignty of government. It is needed in order to facilitate a working government. An example would be acquire territory. The fourth type of power is concurrent powers. Those are the powers that are shared between the federal and the state government. An example would be levy taxes, because both types of governments do this job. And the fifth type of power is the reserved power. These are the powers that are just limited to the states. An example would be interstate commerce, education, and election facilitation.
Dual federalism is similar to a layered cake. Power is clearly separated between state and federal governments. An example of this would be McCulloch v. Maryland, where the Supreme Court stated that states cannot tax a national institution. Cooperative federalism is similar to a marble cake. State and federal governments began to intertwine powers to solve problems. An example of this would be FDR's New Deal. New federalism is when powers are brought back to states through devolution. It is similar to a marble cake, but with more state authority. An example of this would be Nixon's Family Assistance Plan.
The devolution revolution came from the ideology of Ronald Reagan associated with New Federalism. New Federalism and the devolution revolution in general was the transfer of power from the federal government to the states. It occurred in the early 1980s and lasted through the early 2000s. Resulted from the transfer of categorical to block grants and less money being sent from the Fed to the states, causing them to be more independent. Fiscal federalism is the idea that the federal government is better suited to handle financial issues that the government faces as a whole. It defines the roles of the different levels of government in respect to finances.
Grant and aid is money provided by the federal government to states for projects. An example would be when the U.S. Congress raised the drinking age from 18 to 21, which the states have to follow to receive funding. Categorical grants are grants from the federal government to states for specific purposes. An example would be Medicaid and poverty relief programs. Block grants are a grant from the federal government to the states for a wide range of services. An example would be the Social Services Block Grant. Unfunded mandates, a requirement for states to perform certain tasks, but with no money provided for fulfilling the requirements. An example would be the Internet Tax Non-Discrimination Act of 2004.
China